Welcome to Inside the Vault. I'm your host, Mark Yaxley. As you know, Inside the Vault is a place where we cover all topics precious metals related. Today, we're going to be speaking about individual retirement accounts, or IRAs, specifically self-directed IRAs. These accounts allow U.S. citizens to buy and hold physical gold and silver bars and coins as part of their retirement savings. It's a great opportunity. So in order to give you the best education possible on the subject, we've invited a specialist from the field of IRAs to talk with us today. Scott Maurer is the Director of Business Development for Advanta IRA, which is one of two US-based custodians that SWP has partnered with in order to give our clients the ability to hold physical gold and silver inside of an IRA stored offshore in the Cayman Islands. So without further ado, let me introduce Scott, and we'll dive into this exciting topic. Scott, welcome to Inside the Vault. We're very excited to have you here with us today. I think it's a great time to be talking about precious metals, and for American citizens, the ability to include precious metals in a self-directed IRA. So very glad to have an expert here with us today. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be on and share the information I can with your listeners and your viewers on how they can use their IRA accounts and old 401ks to access and invest in precious metals.
Well, great, Scott. Thank you. And we look forward to it as well. I think it's a great topic, very educational and potentially very beneficial for people as well, financially speaking. So I wanted to start, Scott, with a very basic question, because I know, before coming into this industry, I wasn't aware of self-directed IRAs. So the first question I had for you today, and for our audience, for those who may not yet be familiar with the concept, what is a self-directed IRA?
That's a great question, Mark, and that's something we get quite often from a lot of people. And a self-directed IRA, very simply, is a retirement account that allows you to invest your retirement funds outside of the more traditional stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. It's allowing people to still use those same funds, keep them tax protected, but invest in assets that you control, hence the term self-directed, where you're actually choosing the type of an investment that you're making. A lot of people think they have a self-directed IRA because within their brokerage platform, they can choose from a variety of mutual funds, stocks, bonds, and other publicly traded assets. But in truth, a really truly self-directed IRA is one in which you can choose among completely different asset classes, again, outside of what a brokerage firm is typically going to offer you on their platform. So, a lot of individuals, again, have IRAs, their old 401ks on a brokerage platform that limits you to the investments they sell. With a self-directed IRA, it's up to you to choose what type of an investment you wish to make inside that account.
Great. And what type of accounts can be self-directed? Is it the full gamut of accounts, or is there limitations?
It's really any type of IRA. So it's important to also remember when we talk about self-directed IRAs, that self-directed is the moniker that refers really to the ability to invest in what we call alternative assets, the things that we're going to talk about today. But the types of IRAs at their core that can be self-directed are the same types of IRAs and accounts that you would find at a bank or a brokerage firm. So a self-directed IRA could be a simple traditional or rollover IRA account. It could be a Roth IRA. If you're self-employed, you can open up a SEP or a simple IRA that allow for larger annual contributions to an account. And we also offer solo 401k plans for people who are self-employed. You have the ability to set up your own 401k plan. So again, the type of IRA that you have with your current, say for someone who's listening now, you have a current IRA with a brokerage account, you can have that same type of IRA with Advanta, but just taking that money instead and investing it into alternative assets. So again, really the answer, what accounts can be self-directed? Any type of IRA, traditional, Roth, SEP, or simple. Again, self-employed individuals can set up solo 401ks. And anybody who has a former employer's plan, you have an old 401k, an old 403b plan, or old 457, or for federal government employees, the TSP plan, once you're no longer employed with a company, you can also move that money into a self-directed account. So the only basically retirement account that you can't move in many cases are current 401ks. If you're working for an employer offering you a retirement plan, a lot of times while you're still working with them, you may not have the flexibility to move the funds. But any old employer's plan, and certainly any type of IRA, can be self-directed.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And I know you've got some slides that you're going to show to us later, kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of how a self-directed IRA account works. But one more question before we get there. We know that you can include precious metals, which again, I think is just a fantastic opportunity for American taxpayers to take advantage of the potential upside of precious metals and have them included in those accounts. But what else can you include in a self-directed IRA?
So, Mark, that's a great question. We get asked that from time to time, and sometimes it's I'll certainly go through some things you can do, but the way the rules are written from the IRS perspective, they've only placed limitations on things you can't do within an IRA. So the IRS rules prohibit you from investing in anything that is considered life insurance or something that is considered a collectible, like vintage wines, artwork, some collectible coins, which we'll go over in just a minute. The distinction between a collectible coin and a coin that is acceptable because it's based, because it's a precious metals coin. So the IRS says those are the only two investments you cannot make in an IRA. You can't buy life insurance and you can't buy collectibles. So practically speaking, we see people obviously investing into precious metals within their IRA. A lot of people invest into real estate, single family homes, rental properties, multifamily real estate, people doing private lending from their IRAs, lending money to third parties, hedge funds, private startup companies. Again, the list really does go on because it's anything basically that is not life insurance or is not a collectible is permitted. Again, precious metals is another class of assets that we see a number of people investing into.
That sounds like I love the flexibility. I think that's fantastic for investors to be able to be so diverse amongst their holdings in these self-directed IRAs. Thank you, Scott. So let's jump into the slides. I think the first thing we want to show people specific to precious metals is what can be included in terms of precious metals. What are the criteria for those bars and coins in order to qualify for a self-directed IRA?
Sure, yeah, and Mark, I think as I was talking a minute ago, there are certain coins and things that would be considered to be collectibles inside a portfolio. So it's always important, and I know obviously at Strategic Wealth, you all know exactly what coins are permissible. So that's important for an individual to work with a dealer who knows which types of gold and silver and platinum and palladium can be added as part of an IRA portfolio. So there are certainly some metals that don't meet those fineness requirements that the IRS defines. And typically, the metal needs to be at least 99.5% pure gold or silver. I think that the percentages might differ a little bit with the other types of metals as well. So in that case, if someone's looking to invest in, say, a rare coin, say a 1920s ruble from the old Soviet Republic, that's not going to qualify. That is a collectible. What we're looking for here are metals, whether it's a coin, whether it's a bullion bar, in which the value of that coin or bullion bar is based on essentially the value of the underlying metal itself. So it's not the fact that gold or silver may be rare, it's what the value of that gold or silver is on a per ounce basis. So that's very important to know. And another important note as well is when you do invest with your IRA accounts, the IRS rules stipulate that you as the individual IRA owner should not be in physical possession of those precious metals purchased by the IRA account. So you would need to use a storage facility, obviously like what you all do at Strategic Wealth. You can buy the metals from you and simply have you store them there because the IRA owner is not allowed to physically possess those metals. But when you get into talking about the types of permissible coins, here's a few examples. There's the American gold and silver eagles, the Canadian gold and silver maple leafs, the British, they're called the Queen's Beast coins. And there's a number of other countries as well. Actually, it's kind of almost too long to list in one slide here. But there are a number of others that actually do qualify as well. And certainly a lot of the gold, silver, and platinum and palladium bars as well. Again, the key component is that the value of what you're purchasing through the IRA account, the value and the purchase price is based on kind of the current trading value of these different underlying metals. It is not based on the fact that the coin or the bar is rare in nature or has not met that fineness requirement.
Okay, so it's based on the actual commodities value, the content of the bullion product, and not, like you said, any rarity or anything like that.
That is correct, and that is a specific carve out within the IRS rules where it says, you can't invest in life insurance and you can't invest in collectibles. That is the carve out with the exception of certain precious metals based on, again, the fineness requirement, and also the fact that it is, not a, like I said, it's based on a commodity pricing, not based on a rarity price guide.
Okay, understood. Let's keep going. Scott, I know you have more information for us.
Sure. So a lot of times the question is kind of, what does the process look like? If I have money in my IRA account and I want to buy the metals, what does that look like from start to finish? So we kind of have a hypothetical situation here with an individual, Joe, who's got $100,000 in a brokerage account. He'd like to place some of that money into purchasing American Gold Eagles. And I think, as you mentioned, Mark, a lot of times, again, what people are looking for is diversity and probably safety as well. But when they're buying metals, they're looking to make a portion of their portfolio and placing a portion of their portfolio into precious metals. With a self-directed IRA, it is not an all or nothing strategy. You can certainly use your IRA funds and have some of those funds kept in the stock market, perhaps invest a good chunk of them in metals and real estate. You're allowed to make that diversification. So for this particular client, Joe, looking to place some of that money into American Gold Eagle coins, his first step is going to be opening up and funding an account. That's filling out our Advanta paperwork to establish the IRA, request funds be moved from his current custodian over to us at Advanta. And then Joe himself is going to be the one negotiating the terms, what metals he's buying, what any markup would be from the dealer on buying those particular metals. And we're going to want to see at Advanta, again, one of the important things we need to see is documentation that these metals are being purchased in the name of the IRA. So the purchase order that the dealer writes up should be written in the name of Joe's IRA account. And we are going to ask that before we send money out of Joe's account, that Joe reviews and approves that purchase order from the dealer and then forwards that on to us. So again, initially up front, we're setting up his account. We are getting the funds transferred from, say, his Fidelity or his Schwab account over into an Advanta IRA account. And then Joe tells us, hey, I want to buy this percentage or this amount of American Gold Eagles. Here's the purchase order from the dealer. He ultimately signs off on that purchase order. And additionally, Joe's other decisions, deciding where those metals are going to be stored, as I mentioned a minute ago, Joe personally cannot store those metals. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have a depository, someone, again, like your firm, Mark, to hold those metals from him, and any storage fees are typically then paid out of the IRA. That storage account also should be titled in the name of Joe's IRA. So Joe has funded his account from his brokerage account over to Advanta. He's directed us to make the purchase. He's set up the storage account. At that point, Advanta will then initiate a transfer of funds out of Joe's IRA to the actual precious metals dealer. So we're going to review that purchase order, the storage agreement, get Joe's approval, and then ultimately we're going to wire funds out of the IRA to the dealer, and then also send along the storage instructions to the dealer on for them where and how to store those metals, or if those metals need to be shipped from the dealer to the storage location. We're going to include that as well. So Joe's account statement is going to show he brought in $100,000 from Fidelity into Advanta as cash. And then his account statement is going to show that we sent that cash out for the purchase of the number of gold coins, in this case, on the purchase agreement. So Joe's account statement now will reflect the value of the actual metals he is holding inside of his IRA. And going forward, the storage facility is going to simply hold those metals until direction from Joe, by Joe directing Advanta. If he wants to sell those at some point and cash them in, and the cash comes back to his IRA, we've had clients take distributions of the metals and say, hey, I actually would like to hold these personally, and I want to withdraw it from the IRA. They can certainly do that as well. So once the metals are with the storage facility, Joe will simply work with Advanta telling us either to sell them back to the dealer or to a different dealer, or take a distribution of those metals at a given time. So it's really, again, with a self-directed IRA, Joe is driving the ship on, again, choosing what metals to purchase, what dealers to go through, and ultimately the disposition of those metals themselves, how long he wants to hold them. In his account, again, buying precious metals is a great hedge against inflation. And so some people look very long-term to hold those. Other people may be looking shorter term or wanting to take a distribution. And we can certainly accommodate in this case, Joe is the account holder for whichever method he chooses to go by.
That's a great overview, Scott. Appreciate that. And just to clarify for our viewers, our followers, our existing clients, In this scenario that Scott's describing, SWP can act both as the dealer, so the company that you're buying the precious metals from, and also as a storage facility. So that is one of the advantages of dealing with SWP, is that it's a fully integrated solution in terms of being both the dealer and the storage provider, in working in partnership with Advanta as the custodian in this case. So thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I would agree 100% on that, Mark. It is much, obviously when your dealer and your storage facility are the same, it makes it much easier and simpler process with less moving parts, to get that accomplished. So obviously for people doing that with you, it does make the process easier on our end and certainly on their end as well.
Great.
Yeah, and so that's the process that's involved. It's fairly, again, straightforward. It's simple. It's easy. And it doesn't take much to get started or get involved. That's, certainly here's some of my contact information for anyone looking to reach out to me to get that process started or has other questions about what's involved. We're always more than happy to answer those questions.
Perfect, Scott. Thanks. And we'll be sure to include your contact details below this video on YouTube. There'll also be a link on our website. If you don't mind just stopping to share your screen, Scott, I just wanted to ask you a few more questions, kind of FAQs that come up, things I've heard throughout my career as we talk about IRAs with our clients. And I think you touched on this earlier, but just to circle back, they're able to roll over or transfer funds that they already are holding with other financial institutions, correct?
Absolutely. So yeah, most individuals who have IRAs or have old 401ks probably have those accounts with, like I said, I mentioned Schwab or Fidelity are two of them, Wells Fargo, Merrill Lynch. You can certainly move those funds from those accounts to a self-directed IRA. It is a tax-free transfer of money when you move money from like account to like account. And that's something that up front in the process, we are advising the client on the proper way to do that so that the client has no negative tax consequence for doing it. As long as you do it the right way, you can actually do multiple transfers. So let's say that you wanted to purchase 10 gold coins today. So you move over enough money to do that, and then 6 months goes by and you want to add another 10 coins. You can always do a subsequent transfer or rollover at that time. And again, it's always a tax-free movement of money as long as you do it the right way.
Right. So if someone is interested in doing one of those transfers or rollovers, their first call should really be to you guys to get informed about the correct process on how to do that.
That is correct. Yeah, you can reach out to us directly. We'll get them started on the right path.
So, the other natural question that comes up, Scott, when we're speaking to people about IRAs, and I can speak to the storage piece here, is what are the fees involved to set up an account, to keep that account open and to maintain that account with Advanta?
Yeah, our fees, it's a $50 one-time fee to open the account, and I think you're looking at roughly $225 a year to have the metals in the account, and for Advanta to do all of the IRS reporting. And then also the fee for the storage as well. It's a very straightforward, simple pricing. I think the only other fee I forgot to mention, we have wire fees, obviously, if we're wire transferring funds from your IRA to purchase. And there is a one-time, I think, $35 fee to process the actual purchase. So very low fees. Again, you're looking at roughly $225 a year for us to do all the IRS reporting and also have your metals stored as well.
Great. Yeah, I can speak to the storage aspect. It's a fixed storage fee of $225 per year. So there's no limit on how much metal you can actually store for that $225, which is, works out to a really good deal for people that have substantial holdings in their self-directed IRA account. Last thing, Scott, is there anything else that people should know about self-directed IRAs? Being an expert in the field, you've probably heard every single question thrown at you, but is there anything that, we haven't touched on today that people should absolutely be aware of or be on the lookout for when they're trying to select an IRA custodian like yourselves?
Yeah, I think one important thing I always like to mention about self-directed IRA, it's somewhat self-evident in the title, being that the account is self-directed, which means the account holder is the one making the decisions. But it's always important for that account holder to do all of their due diligence on, who they're investing with, where they're investing their funds, finding their particular investment. That's not something that a self-directed company does. You tell us to invest. We make sure that the paperwork gets titled properly, but it is always up to the individual owner, especially if you're newer. I would say, for example, if you're newer to investing in precious metals, listen to more videos that Mark's done on why and how you should invest in precious metals and make sure that's a good decision for you and you feel comfortable getting involved with how that works, because that's not something that Advanta is going to counsel you on, and really no self-directed company is. If you're talking to a self-directed company that is endorsing a particular investment, regardless of what that may be, I would raise an eyebrow a little bit at that, because self-directed companies are not financial advisors. So it is up to you to become educated on what you're doing. Again, Mark, you have plenty of educational videos for people to find that out. If you want to learn more about self-directed IRAs, we do the same thing. So just make sure you're doing your due diligence and being comfortable in the investment, because ultimately it is your retirement account and you are in control of it.
That's a really good point, Scott. I think education is always a great first step. And that's exactly why we wanted to have you on today. Thank you for providing the high-level overview of how self-directed IRA works. I think anyone who is interested should definitely consider Advanta. Reach out to Scott or his team to become better informed on how they can help you. And again, Scott, appreciate your time today and look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Yeah, Mark, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. For those of you who are interested in learning more about IRAs, I've listed Advanta IRA's contact details here. As well, on SWP's website, we have a dedicated page for IRAs. So if you want to learn more about the steps involved, opening, purchasing, and then storing, you can visit the IRA page on our website, or just send us an email or give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out.